Very good evening and thank you so much for tuning into WION World is One News. I'm Chaiti Narula and welcome to the Union Budget Special on the taxation system in this country. Now, a country with a population of 1.3 billion people, where each citizen earns $5,600 on an average, it falls behind massively when it comes to filing their income tax returns. With high population, the cost of amount of amenities that the government needs to provide also increase. And thus, there is the need for more tax revenues. So why is it that people are not willing to pay their taxes? They're always questioning the governance when it comes to the government and shy away from paying the taxes. Why is it there are high levels of tax evasion in this country? Or are there enough tax collections but we're not utilizing it well? This and more we will discuss with our experts, Vikas Chaturvedi, the partner at Athos Group, Rakesh Nangia, the co-chairman of ASSOCHAM Tax Committee, and BM Singh, former chairman of Central Board of Direct Taxes as well. We will come back in just about a minute. In the meanwhile, take a look at the story.
According to Income Tax Department, in the year 2014-2015, only 39 million Indians filed their income tax returns, constituting just 3% of the country's population. And out of these 39 million, around 16 million paid nil tax, bringing down the number of effective taxpayers to just 1.79% of the population. Comparing it globally, in the year 2014, around 44% of the population of the United States of America filed their tax returns. There is another problem that India faces, and that is the type of revenue collections. From 2011 to 2016, while direct tax collection increased by about 66%, indirect tax collection grew by a whopping 107%. Unlike the direct taxes such as income tax and corporate tax, the indirect taxes are paid by each person, whether rich or poor. Thus, it is a regressive tax, and its higher proportion in tax collections reflects badly on an economy. Another interesting fact about India's tax collections is that it is highly skewed. Two states, Maharashtra and Delhi, contribute more than 50% of the total direct tax collections of India. High tax rates and complex tax filing processes are considered the main reasons for low tax payments. As per a recent report by PwC and the World Bank, total tax rate in India is as high as 61.7%, and it takes up to 243 hours to comply with tax regulations, whereas similar figures for the US stand as low as 43.8% and 175 hours. While people in India are required to pay 33 types of taxes as per the report, China has just 7 types, making tax compliance much simpler. After the rolling out of GST later in the year, India's current complex tax structure is expected to change for good. In New Delhi, with Saurabh Goenka, Manoj Kevalramani, WION.
Well, that was our correspondent Saurabh Goenka deep diving into the taxation system in India. Now, compared with the other countries, India has a very skewed tax structure. Most of our tax collections just come from 2 states. Most of our tax revenues come from indirect taxes, making it a regressive tax structure. I'm going to come over to our guests in the studio. We're being joined in the studio by Vikas Chaturvedi and Rakesh Nangia. Now, I'm going to start off with Mr. Chaturvedi, actually. Demonetization was meant to widen India's tax structure and increase our abysmally low tax collections. In the upcoming budget, how do you see the reforms come in to be able to widen the tax bracket?
So, thank you, madam. I mean, the way I look at the way demonetization would increase the net, of course, it has make an impact in the way the collection should have been in the country. But also at the same time, it has created a lot of the element of a lot of fear in the country. So what is very important now, what we expect out of this budget is to create a sort of a hip-hopness, I would say, or an expectation for Aam Aadmi, as I would say, wherein the boost in the demand could actually go up, because the demonetization, what it has caused is some sort of an element of fear amongst the Aam Aadmi, and I think this budget will sort of bring in at least the cheers to the normal people, wherein the demand could spur, because what we are witnessing now is, although the idea was to collect the taxes but it has directly impacted the demand, which has actually hit the economy as such.
Right, but the tax collection in India being so low, how do you think the finance minister looks to generate funds for the development works in health, in education, in defense and other sectors?
So the way finance minister is looking or should look at to increase is to expand the tax base as we have now. I mean, we just saw a report where we are saying only 3% of this country's population is paying taxes. So I think the big job for the finance minister is to enhance the tax base of this country. And I think one of the ways he should do this is either to lower the tax rate or to increase the slab, or maybe a combination of the both, whereby, you know, the tax base should be increased. And the moment the tax base is increased, it will directly impact all the businesses in a positive manner. So it will impact the economy very positively.
I'm going to come to Mr. Nangia now. You know, in our country, the tax base is low, and rightfully so, because the common man thinks that there's a lack of governance in this country. Where is the taxpayers' money really going? You've got several layers of bureaucracy and red tapeism. You've got inefficiency on the part of the services as well, what the government is providing. The common man is always complaining about the government not doing enough, and a lot of corruption and many issues that come up, which is why the common man doesn't want to pay the taxes in an honest and genuine manner. And this is a problem which is plaguing India for the longest time, and rightfully so. Today, the common man is not being able to benefit from the tax collections that the government is doing because it's getting eaten up somewhere. How do you see this issue? How do you see the government resolve it? How do you see better governance in the country so that the common man is encouraged to pay the taxes that he needs to?
I think one of the important part, just to add to the figures that were given to us,
right,
you'll be surprised there are just 24 lakhs people who pay the taxes which are income of above 10 lakhs rupees. And you'll be surprised there are 48,000 people in this whole country whose income reported is 1 crore. I think this is extremely, you can say, is actually use the word shameful, basically, to have an income of a country with 130 crores people, and you are only have a 48,000 people paying taxes of more than reporting an income of only 1 crore rupees. So unfortunately, this is very true about this concern. It's very unfortunate in a country like this size, where it's absolutely low, the tax base is there.
Right.
And the expectation, what you rightly said, everybody says, why should I pay taxes? What the government is giving back to me today, basically. I think it happens in every developing country. You start expecting it. We are actually primarily, you must realize, we are a very underdeveloped country, agrarian society, social issues were so much. The government needed a lot of money to basically to fund this thing. So what they did it, they started with a tax rate of 97%, where the tax outgoing was 97, you have come down dramatically, actually.
Right.
So the expectation of everybody, I've talked to so many people that there's a, oh, why should I pay taxes once what the government does for me? I think this is not a very fair statement at all. I don't agree with this statement.
You know, I'm going to play a devil's advocate to that statement,
Yeah,
and bring in Mr. Chaturvedi as well. He thinks it's not fair, really, for the common man to say, what is the government really doing when, and why should I pay taxes? Yes, you are absolutely right in that regard. But the other side, and I'm talking on behalf of the common man, is that there is a serious lack of governance and dependability in our system, with bureaucracy and red tapeism and corruption on an all-time high. How would you balance that perspective out as to what Mr. Nangia just highlighted?
So I would completely support with what Mr. Nangia is saying. What we actually need is the structural changes in this country.
Sure.
Because unless and until the structural reforms are implemented, India would not achieve its real targets or its real output in the sense it should achieve. So to add on, I mean, I think what is very important is there has to be a cultural knowledge, or I would say a sort of a education to the common man, that if you are paying taxes, the taxes will eventually give you back. You know, the government will give you back in some sort of another, in the way the country would be uplifted.
No, well, how can the government pose itself to be less corrupt and address the issues of red tapeism, corruption, and the money which is just getting disappeared from the exchequer's collection? How does the government make sure that the citizen becomes confident that his money is going to the right place and getting spent by the country in the right manner?
So, yeah, I mean, I think what is really important is that the systems have not been so transparent.
Right.
So what India really needs is this transparent system and the structural changes in the way the government is executing its task. I think those are the two important peripheries that needs to be done.
I like to add in the important. See, what we expected from this budget, there has to be some structural changes in the economy. There has to be out-of-box thinking in the economy. There has to be a dynamism is concerned. And let me tell you, few very bold steps which have been taken by the government, whether it was the demonetization, whether the Benami Abolition Act, whether it was the black money addressing the issue. These steps, if they continue to take it, will be the only reason where you find the faith of the ordinary man building up in the government. And actually, you're right in the sense there has to be complete reform in the tax administration. There has to be confidence in the administration is concerned that they're going to do justice. The bureaucracy will not play a role. There will be no corruption in the tax administration. These are the steps which have been initiated, but a lot needs still to be done to have that confidence.
Let's wait and see what the finance minister comes up with to address that particular issue before they make sure that every citizen ends up paying their taxes honestly as well. We're going to bring in our other guest who is joining us live from Patiala, Mr. B.M. Singh, who is the former chairman of Central Board of Direct Taxes, which is the CBDT. Mr. Singh, what are the measures that the government has adopted to increase the tax compliance so far in India? Where has the government failed in their efforts?
Well, the government has all the machinery at its disposal. It has the modern infrastructure of digitization at its disposal, the ability to get information from various sources, collate it, and disperse it amongst its officers. And if such information is properly used, that is, on big expenditure, on people traveling abroad, on people spending on big marriage functions, and in making big investments in land and in movable property. If all this information is passed on to the correct jurisdictional officers, and if it doesn't match with the return which they have filed, they can be asked questions, their cases can come under scrutiny. And it is this particular seamless transfer of information which will help the government to get more taxes. And this has always been on the government's table. I mean, they've always had this particular machinery at its disposal. Only thing is, they have to train the people, officers to use it, to put actual manpower on the job. We managed to get ahead as far as collection and expansion of our taxpayer base is concerned. Is going to help or is going to further depress the economic of this time will tell.
All right, I think we're losing our connection to Mr. B.M. Singh. We're going to come back to him very, very shortly. I'm going to come here to my guest in the studio joining us from the WION headquarters in New Delhi. We're going to patch him on back in just about a bit. But do you think India needs a fairly more equitable tax structure, in your opinion? Do you think there's the poor and the salaried are paying an unfair price in terms of taxation, and a lot of entrepreneurs are getting away with not disclosing their income the way they should be disclosing? Do you think the tax system in itself needs an absolute whitewash and a reform? Because obviously there's a few sections of the society paying a disproportionate price.
Yeah, so I mean, in my view, I would not say that the systems needs a completely overhauling, but what is important is tweaking and making sure that the tax base is enhanced on one part, and number two, there is more certainty and more clarity on taxes. I think it's very, very important. And when you talk of the global competitiveness, equitableness, I think what is very important is, any company which is doing a business in India, is it paying a fair tax? I mean, and that is where I think a serious thought process is required, because if you look at the global countries, I mean, we talk of UK, we talk of Singapore, there are countries where the tax rate is 20% or less than 20%. So in India, when you see the tax rate, as we also saw in the report, it goes up to 60-61% of total taxation. So what is important and what is very critical at this point for the finance minister is to ensure that how we ensure to implement a tax rate, a tax system which is equitable, that it sort of, balances out the corporate tax rate on one side and at the same time enhance the base of the local taxpayers in the country. I think that would be the
And
trade.
work around the direct tax slabs a little bit so that the poor
Exactly.
is not paying a disproportionate price,
If
perhaps.
you look at today, I mean, it is 30% the CIT rate. Under certain income threshold, it is 29%. The objective should be to move towards 25%, towards 20%, if you have to really achieve the global competitiveness. I clearly remember Finance Minister mentioned in the event in December that what India needs is to reduce its tax rate to be more competitive at the global level.
Mr. Nange, also the salaried are paying a disproportionate price in today's direct tax system in India. Would you agree with me?
I agree in one sense. A salary person has a very limited avenues, a limited thing to really grow anything. His income gets reported practically end to end to a rupee. But I tell you, I add two things to it. What is the more crisis if you see really do the figure analysis, actually the number of people who are not paying the taxes, even they're filing the return. The issue more grave is not having so many people filing the return. More important is under-reporting of the income.
Right.
You see the people filing a return, and let me add a figure to it, from 0 to 2.5 lakhs people, there's almost 1 crore of people who file the return. There are another close to 2 crore rupees, almost around about that, people who file an income from 2.5 lakhs to 5 lakhs people. So what happens? The people are earning a lot of money, especially the businesses, and they under-report the income.
Right.
That is a more serious crisis. Now, if a person is under-reporting the income, if the government has a machinery to really catch him, you find the revenue going up higher rather than only adding 1 more % that number of people filing a return. So under-reporting is a more serious issue for me rather than just merely filing a return.
You mentioned that the revenue needs to grow higher because under-reporting is not acceptable. Now, demonetization saw the revenues go up very excessively because we all know that the income was deposited into banks and the banks saw higher collections of liquid cash coming in as well. Now, the exchequer stands to gain when there is so much cash being deposited into the banks, and how do you think the finance minister would now pass on these collections and benefit the end consumer at the end of the day? Because, of course, their tax collections have gone up now.
Yeah. So what is very important now is if you look at the banks, the money flowing into the banks is tremendous. And there has to be a mechanism now whereby the money is actually put in to the economy. So I think what would be very important for the finance minister is to sort of making the changes which boost the demand. For example, let's take a housing sector. Now, the housing sector has really gone down the drain in last 6 months to 1 year time. So what, from a finance minister's perspective, I think what is very important is to how to spur the demand in the housing sector, how to spur the demand in various investment schemes, because there's a lot of cash sitting for the people in the bank. So the whole mechanism now for the finance minister should be to see how you use that money flowing in the banks to get into the markets, to end users, and maybe also to the government. If they issue infrastructure bonds and things like that, there will be a lot of money which will be flowing in the economy. And I think that is what is essential at this point in time for economy to go to next level.
We're going to bring in Mr. B.M. Singh, whose connection was lost just a little while ago. I believe he's back on. Now, Mr. Singh, increasing the base of indirect taxes seems to have been a shortcut for increasing the tax revenues. How can we increase the base for direct taxes in India? Do we see a change coming in, or the same might continue? What's your sense of the situation?
Well, before you, when I was speaking last time, I was telling you how to increase the base is to gather further information from various sources. People should be asked to report big expenditure, big investments, quote their PAN, which should be, and this information which comes into a central database should be sent out to the various officers for them to verify whether these people are actually declaring the right income. There is no other way to make our base of taxpayers larger. And if you are going to jack up the minimum exemption, then so many lakhs of Indians are going to go out of the tax system again. So I'm not for that. You can reduce the tax rate, but you should not increase the tax slab. You can reduce the rate, but you can't give the higher exemption which people are asking for. We should keep everything and everybody in our tax database. So this information can be utilized to see whether they're paying the proper taxes. You can keep shouting from the rooftops that people are not paying and should be paying and this and that, but unless you get all this information, which is easily available from various sources, we have the information systems, the reporting systems in place in our rules, and we should implement them to get the information and disseminate to the tax officers. And they should restrict themselves to inquiries basically just on the specific information they received and not go further fishing inquiries, because that will be harassment. And this itself will get us great results. I hope I'm clear on this.
Right. You know, the government of India provides several incentives through which one can save taxes, Mr. Singh. How can we save our taxes, and what can we expect from the budget this year on the taxation front, really?
Well, I've only been hearing about it. They could give you further relief as far as payment of interest and installments on house loans is concerned. They could give you further incentive as far as investment in insurance and such like policies in retirement funds are concerned. Otherwise, our rate of personal tax is not high at all. It is the corporate rate which is considered a bit high, and I think they're going to tweak it and bring it down, as was promised in the earlier budget. And that itself will be a great incentive for business. But I think just implementation of what is available in our tax statute and rules would be enough to get a higher collection and increase our database, base of taxpayers.
With us, I'm going to come back to you very shortly. I'm going to come to Mr. Nangia in the studio with us. How do you think we can increase our direct tax base in this country? Do you see where the problem really lies, and how will the government in the upcoming union budget rectify this? Of course, with your closing thoughts on what your expectations are from the union budget to come.
I think that you rightly said it. There is a high level of concentration of wealth with the top people in the country. You know, there was a latest study which just came up that 1% richest Indian, they hold 58% of India's wealth.
Well, that's true.
And this is the second part. 57 top people, billionaires, they hold wealth of 70% of the population from the bottom is concerned.
Right.
So this
income disparity.
Very high income disparity, and that's the reason we have a low tax base is concerned.
Right.
At the same time, we also believe that people are making money, but are earning money, but they're not reporting to that.
Sure.
This is a hard reality, and this is a factual position. And we need, the government has to increase the direct base, because indirect tax base is regressive in nature is concerned.
Right.
So the only way, two things are there. One, I believe a demonetization will definitely have a positive effect. All the money which was lying under the mattresses all have been banked. When the money has been back, it will be used for productive purpose.
Sure.
Either you invest in the market, or you invest in the bonds, or you invest in the business, you invest in the real estate. So I believe that will also churn out the income which has been banked, has become your white money, to say that. So it will automatically end up creating a wider basis.
That is one action that the government has already taken. Yeah. What would you advise the government in terms of bringing a reform into the taxation system from the upcoming union budget? Your closing thoughts on the expectations that you would have from the finance minister? I think as everybody is expecting, a moderation of tax rate is extremely essential. And the reason is this: India cannot be isolated. You see the worldwide, especially what happened to UK, what happened to USA, there's a drastic fall in the corporate tax rate. Right. So India cannot afford to have a tax rate of 35%. Right. And second part, finance minister should not tinker anymore with the rates. He has to drastically reduce the rate. He has promised a 25% rate. And if you see the last budget, when he tinkered the rates by 1%, or only for very one category you made it 25%, will not work. You have to make India as a competitive. You have to lower the tax rate, ensure a better standard of compliance, ensure that you really see the people report, your whole mechanism of gathering information and implementing it. Sure. And flawlessly. That's the way, this is my expectation basically. I'm going to come to Mr. Chaturvedi now. Your closing comments on what your expectation would be from the upcoming union budget on really tightening up the taxation system in our country. So my take would be that first of all, the government should lower the CIT rate, as Mr. Nangia pointed out, because that is absolutely essential to expand the tax collection in the country. And secondly, basically to expand the base of the taxpayer. As we just said, only 3% are paying tax. So how we can take it to 10%, 15%, and gradually looking at to 20, 25, 30% levels. I think those two are very important. And while you do so, you have to also ensure the international investors' mindset. So you have to create more certainty in your tax system. You have to bring more clarity
and more simplification of the process in the firms. I
Right.
think this would be my
Lastly, we'll get Mr. B.M. Singh back on to get his final comment on what he would expect from the finance minister in the upcoming union budget as far as the taxation system in India is concerned. Mr. Singh, your final closing thoughts on this particular topic?
What I would like to add to what I've already said is that, as far as the black money or the unreported income or unreported wealth is concerned, yes, demonetization may have a salutary effect, but only a small percentage of that is kept in cash with people at home. Most of it is embedded in property already, is spent through political parties, is spent on various occasions like marriages and others. If you could tighten our system to look into these matters, especially the property, we all know at what rate, say, for example, a property would sell at and at what rate it is being reported. So one way to go about this is to bring down the property tax, to have a higher process of finding at what rate the properties are actually being registered and what rate is the real rate. And this through the circle rates, through the local people, through our intelligence sources. If we can implement that, we will get much more into a tax kitty than we have.
Right. Thank you so much to all our guests for joining us today on the upcoming Union Budget Special. Mr. Vikas Chaturvedi, Mr. Rakesh Nangia and B.M. Singh as well, who've joined us and given your views on the expectations that you have from the upcoming Union Budget. We'd like to thank our viewers for tuning in. More news and updates continue on WION World is One News. This is Chaiti Narula signing off. I will see you Monday at 5:30 p.m. with a Union Budget Special again. Stay tuned.